something I've been hearing a lot lately, and in truth, I've been hearing this for decades now, but it's come up more and more these last few years when people say, "Well, I shouldn't have to learn self-defense. I shouldn't have to learn to defend myself. I should be safe walking down the street and this and that," which I don't per se disagree with. You should. It's just not how reality works. And is that mindset of not accepting reality as is and living in a relatively utopian vision of the world. That's becoming increasingly, in my opinion, a problem in that we now have a younger generation who tends to embrace that kind of thinking while not having enough life experience to understand that it's a very faulty logic, a very erroneous way of looking at the world. The reality is that we live on a planet that is exceedingly dangerous. Nature actively tries to kill us every single day, meaning if you are dropped anywhere on this earth, and I'm going to discount the parts that are ocean because you'll just drown, but if you're dropped here anywhere on earth with no clothes, no tools, no food or water, in many places, the vast majority of the places, you'll be dead within 24 hours because exposure to the elements just is going to end your life. That is a reality. I haven't even talked about animals trying to kill you, bacteria trying to make you sick, and so on. There's all that, and we haven't even touched upon other human beings and societies and so on, how they differ and how violence happens there. So it's just a fact of life. Nobody says you have to like it, but living on this planet is dangerous. And as far as we know, it's the only planet in the universe, as far as we know, where life is possible. For sure, all the planets in our planetary system, we know that you can't sustain life as we have it here. It's not possible. So it's a pretty hostile universe out there. And if you begin by accepting that, you can make better decisions. Now, this didn't used to be. It didn't used to be controversial to say this. It used to be that people understood this perfectly. Why? Because we were not living in such a modern society in which many of the problems we used to face as a human race are, if not necessarily solved, especially in the Western countries, they are under control. There's reliable access to food, shelter, and so on. There's many of our basic needs are being met consistently, so you can worry about other things. Here's the thing, though: if something happens and things break down, then all that goes away again. If you are in a mindset that said, well, I shouldn't have to do this, then you are focusing on what I think is a self-defeating strategy, meaning you are expecting that other people will fix it for you or that other people will adapt to what you want. Now, you may be morally and legally in the right, but that still doesn't mean it will happen. Where you say, well, I shouldn't have to learn self-defense, teach men not to attack women. Well, as a society as a whole, we typically tend to teach men to not attack women. It's not that it's never taught, but it still happens, and they should be punished for that if they commit those kind of crimes. In the meantime, while you say that, you're basically saying to women, well, don't learn self-defense because it's not your responsibility. You shouldn't have to, so don't, and focus on the problem side, meaning the criminals who attack women, which very often tend to be men. I understand the attraction to that kind of reasoning. I think it's extremely dangerous because it shifts not blame, and that is a critical point, not blame, but responsibility for keeping yourself safe to somebody else. Like, I don't have to worry about that. Worry about handling those guys. The biggest issue is that we do not apply the same logic to other crimes. We don't say, well, I shouldn't have to lock my door when I leave the house. Teach people not to steal. I shouldn't have to worry about leaving my cell phone on the table when I'm sitting at a restaurant so that somebody can grab it and run away with it. Shouldn't have to worry about that. Teach people not to steal. We do teach people not to steal, and we punish them for it. Theft still works. It still happens. It's all over society, all across the world, and it has been for pretty much as long as humans have been around, I think. But we don't hear that I shouldn't have to kind of reasoning when it comes to that. When people look at self-defense, all of a sudden they change the way they reason. And I think that is unrealistic and it's unfair, primarily because at this stage, this is well accepted. It used to be well accepted. And an easy way you can see that is you can check it out when you look at certain lawsuits and when you look at insurance claims. What does that mean? There's a distinction legally made, and also when you look at your insurance paper, your contract that you signed for car insurance or whatever, you will find clauses that talk about negligence. Negligence means that you made a mistake that you shouldn't have made. You should have known better. And in the legal context, this extends to lawsuits as well, where somebody gets victimized for whatever reason, and the person doing that should have known better, but they were negligent. When you don't lock your car and stuff gets stolen, in many cases, and again, you can read the contract that you have with your insurance company, read it, you will find a clause that says that if you're negligent, you should have locked your car, but you didn't, and stuff gets stolen, they don't pay you out. Same thing, somebody is going to break into your house, you left all the windows and doors open, knowing full well that this is an invitation for thieves to come in, meaning that this is an opportunity that somebody with bad intentions can latch onto and use against you. If you're negligent and you don't close your house down and you leave, again, there's a high likelihood in many cases the insurance company is not going to pay you back. Then there's recklessness. Recklessness, again, it's also a legal concept that is used, that if you know full well you shouldn't have done that, but it's not that you forget about it or you weren't paying attention, is that you willfully ignore what is called a best practice, and it ends up with somebody being victimized because of it, or a crime happens or whatever, then you should be held accountable for that. So this concept of negligence and recklessness even is not new. Not at all, not by far. Apply the same thing to self-defense. It's not your fault that you're being attacked. It's not about blame. The whole concept in this case of victim blaming is completely misused in this context. It's not about blame, it's about responsibility and negligence. When you're driving around in your car, you're supposed to wear your seatbelt. If you don't, you're negligent. And we know that in many cases, if you don't have your seatbelt on and there's a car accident, that you might end up going through the window and dying. It's the same thing. However, if you apply that to self-defense, a lot of people get uncomfortable because you have to use your agency to defend yourself, to keep yourself safe. You have to actually work at it. For me, after all these years, I see it more like it's the same thing as I shouldn't have to brush my teeth. I don't enjoy it particularly. I think it's a waste of time, basically, but I do it anyway. Why? Because I know the consequences of not doing it, and then it's my responsibility that I end up at the dentist having to suffer that how she's going to drill through my teeth to fill them up correctly, and me being able again to live without the pain of having a bunch of rotten teeth there. So it's about responsibility and the consequences of actions or lack thereof. I fully understand why people want to think in such a way, and they focus on, well, if you have this mindset, you can work towards getting rid of the problem. Like the idea of the makeable society. We can remake society and human beings into anything we want. I think the science, as far as I understand it, says the opposite. I also think it's been tried many times before and often ends very badly throughout history. And also that it's unrealistic. But even if you could, You don't have a magic wand that can instantly get us to that situation in which no crime of any kind ever happens, especially relating to violent crime. So if in the meantime, while you are working on getting towards that utopia, you teach people do not learn self-defense, don't do it, focus on making sure that people don't become violent, well, until you get to that utopian situation in which it never happens again, a lot of people will suffer for it. You're creating more victims that way by taking away the tools that are proven and do work in keeping you safe. And that is, in my opinion, very irresponsible and flat out dangerous to a lot of people who actually fit the victim profile of the many criminals that are out there and the many situations in which people can become victimized. I could give plenty more examples of how this applies. The typical example that I give is look, you're crossing the street. In most countries, if you cross the street, you have right of way. The car has to stop. If there's a car coming along the street, he sees that you want to cross the street, he has to stop. In particular, at a zebra crossing. All right, let's say you're at a zebra crossing. You want to cross the street, you look left and right. We actually teach that to our children. Don't just cross the street, look first. They could say, well, I shouldn't have to. The car should stop. Yes, they should, but we know they don't always do it. So you don't want to have your child killed, getting run over by a car. So you teach them not to cross the road, just blindly. Same thing applies to self-defense. Anyway, but back to that example. You see a car racing down the street and you can instantly tell there's no way that car can stop in time if you cross the road at that point in time. You are morally and legally speaking in the right to just cross anyway. There's nothing holding you back. You are, any way you look at it, you are in the right, and it is your right, and you shouldn't have to wait until that car drives you by. Do you cross the street or not? If you know that the consequence of doing so is it's going to get you killed. The vast majority of people will say, no, I won't. I'll wait until that crazy guy drives by. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to self-defense and the people who say I shouldn't have to. If you say, well, I shouldn't have to learn self-defense, you are the person who says, well, I'm going to cross the street anyway. Why? Because I shouldn't have to wait. The car should stop. Yes, well, but it's very predictable that car is going to run you over and kill you anyway. And he's in the wrong. Morally, legally, any way you slice it, that driver is in the wrong. You're still dead though. Apply the same logic to self-defense. Does that mean you have to live scared? No. Does that mean that every situation you find yourself in, you're going to end up having to use physical techniques, violence to stop somebody from attacking you? No, not at all. Self-defense is much, much broader than just the physical part. But discounting it as a whole is, in my opinion, extremely negative for society at large, particularly the people who are vulnerable the most to certain types of crimes, like the elderly, women, and so on. Right, that's my rant for today. I'm going to leave it here. Talk to you guys next time.